Between the ages of 60 and 80, the average person loses between 30 and 40% of their total muscle mass. Not from inactivity, not from eating too little. From a biological signal your body stopped producing that not one doctor in 100 has ever thought to measure. Most people over 60 who notice they are getting physically weaker apply the same explanation to it. They carried boxes for 30 years and now they do not. They played sports twice a week and now they walk. The muscles that served them well for decades are simply retiring along with everything else. That reasoning feels honest. It also happens to be wrong in the most consequential way possible because muscle does not fade from reduced activity alone. It fades when the internal signal that instructs your body to maintain and rebuild muscle tissue goes quiet. That signal has a name, a measurable level, and a direct intervention, none of which your standard annual blood panel has ever included. I am going to show you the three mechanisms behind that, starting with the one that completely reframes how you think about protein and why eating more of it has probably not helped. The third mechanism is the one your doctor has the clearest ability to test and the least routine practice of testing, and it will tell you more about your muscle future than any scale number ever has. Before we go further, subscribe now if this is your first time here. This channel does one thing. It takes the mechanisms your doctor does not have time to explain in a 12-minute appointment and walks you through them completely with the specific numbers and actions that follow from them. No supplement programs, no products, just the mechanism and what to do with it. Subscribe, and it will be here every time we publish. There is a version of this that most people over 60 recognize the moment it is described out loud. You stand up from a low chair and your hands find the armrests before you decide to use them, the way they never used to. You carry a bag of groceries from the car and you put it down and pause, not from breathing but from arm fatigue, and you notice it and say nothing. The stairs up to bed require more from you than they did 2 or 3 years ago, and you have quietly adjusted how you describe the house to people who ask how you manage. You open a jar, and it takes 2 attempts, and you make a joke about it that is partly a joke. You would not call yourself weak. That word does not fit. But the body you are moving through the day has become measurably more resistant to being moved than it once was, and the medical system gave you the word aging, which explained nothing and ended the conversation. Here is the specific problem with that word. Aging is a description, not a diagnosis. When a doctor uses it to explain muscle loss, it is the equivalent of explaining rain by saying the sky is wet. The test that would actually identify the cause costs less than a cholesterol panel, is called a serum IGF-1 level, and is absent from the standard metabolic workup because there is currently no widely approved pharmaceutical that addresses the finding once it comes back low. The test exists. The cause is measurable. The system has no product to sell you on the other side of the result, so the question rarely gets asked. 2 situations need a doctor before a protocol. If your strength loss has been rapid, meaning significant decline over weeks rather than months, or if it is asymmetric with one side dramatically weaker than the other, those patterns need neurological evaluation. If you are on statins, corticosteroids, or certain blood pressure medications that are documented to directly affect muscle tissue, have a conversation with your prescribing doctor about muscle support before making dietary changes. If neither of those applies, and what you are experiencing is gradual, bilateral, and progressive over years, the 3 mechanisms below are almost certainly at the root of it. Mechanism 1. Anabolic resistance. Here is the fact that changes everything, and it is the direct opposite of what most people have been told about muscle and protein. The problem is almost certainly not how much protein you are eating. The problem is that after 60, your muscle tissue has become significantly less able to respond to the protein it receives. This is called anabolic resistance, and it is the central mechanism of sarcopenia. In younger muscle, amino acids from a protein-containing meal activate a cellular pathway called mTOR, which functions as the master switch for muscle protein synthesis. Picture mTOR as the receiving dock of a factory. When amino acids arrive, the dock opens, The signal registers, and production begins. In aging muscle, that dock becomes selectively deaf. The same delivery arrives, carrying the same cargo, and the dock responds at a fraction of the efficiency it once did. Muscle protein breakdown begins to outpace synthesis. The deficit accumulates invisibly, year after year, regardless of how much protein surrounds it. Research published in the Journal of Physiology confirmed that older muscle shows significantly blunted mTOR activation in response to identical protein doses compared to younger muscle. Two people eating the same meal receive fundamentally different muscle signals from it. Mechanism 2. The leucine threshold shift. The second mechanism explains why simply eating more protein in general does not close the gap, and knowing it gives you a precise target instead of a vague instruction. Of all the amino acids that enter your bloodstream from a protein-containing meal, one acts as the specific ignition key for muscle protein synthesis. That amino acid is leucine. But leucine only triggers the synthesis response above a minimum threshold dose. Below that threshold, the muscle does not receive the start signal, regardless of how much total protein surrounds the leucine. In younger adults, that leucine threshold sits at approximately 1.7 to 2 grams per meal. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that in adults over 65, the threshold rises to between 2.5 and 3 grams per meal. The lock has not changed. The key needs to be longer to turn it. Most seniors eating what they consider a reasonable protein intake are consistently landing below this threshold at every meal, not from eating poorly, but because nobody told them the required dose had shifted. Eggs deliver roughly half a gram of leucine each. Cottage cheese, salmon, and chicken breast are among the highest leucine per gram sources available at any grocery store. 3 eggs alongside a cup of cottage cheese clears the threshold cleanly. Let me tell you about someone I will call Robert. Robert is 68, spent 32 years in construction in the north of England, and retired at 63 into what he described as a slow deflation. Not dramatic, not painful, but undeniable. His trousers sat differently. A walking holiday with his wife ended with him falling behind in a way that surprised her more than it surprised him. He had stopped mentioning it at appointments because the first 2 times it had moved quickly past. He was no longer doing physical work. That was expected. That was the end of it. What Robert had never been told was that his IGF-1 level, which we are about to cover, had likely been declining since his mid-50s. That his leucine threshold had shifted to a point his diet was not meeting. That his muscles were receiving a fraction of the anabolic signal they had received a decade earlier, completely independent of his activity level. He followed the protocol for 6 weeks. The first shift he noticed was in week 3, when physical effort began to feel as though something was listening to it again rather than simply absorbing it. By week 6, he completed a garden task he had been quietly rotating off his list for 2 years. His muscle tissue had not structurally transformed in 6 weeks. The signaling environment it was operating inside had. Mechanism 3, IGF-1, decline. The third mechanism is the one with the clearest path to a medical test and the most consistent absence from routine care. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, is the primary hormone through which your body signals every muscle it maintains to keep rebuilding itself. It is produced by the liver in direct response to growth hormone, and both growth hormone secretion and IGF-1 levels decline progressively from the mid-30s onward with no external symptoms until the accumulated deficit becomes visible. Research published in the New England Journal of Medicine established that men over 60 carry on average 14% of the IGF-1 levels measured in men in their 20s. Women over 60 show a comparable decline. This is not a marginal drop. It is the difference between a muscle receiving a clear, continuous rebuild signal and receiving an occasional, faint one it can barely detect. A serum IGF-1 blood test places your level within a reference range for your age and tells you directly how much of this signal your muscles are currently receiving. It is not part of any standard panel. Requesting it at your next appointment with the exact phrase, "I would like my IGF-1 level checked alongside my standard blood work," is a sentence that costs nothing, produces data your treatment has almost certainly never included, and gives your doctor the basis for a conversation about muscle health that standard panels make structurally impossible. The protocol works across 3 daily windows. Precision within each window matters more than the specific foods you choose inside it. The first window opens when you wake and closes 2 hours later. Within that window, your body's anabolic sensitivity to protein is at its daily peak, and the leucine threshold needs to be met before the window closes. A leucine threshold clearing breakfast means a minimum of 30 to 35 grams of total protein with at least 2.5 grams of leucine. 3 whole eggs and a cup of cottage cheese achieves both. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition found that distributing protein intake toward earlier in the day, rather than concentrating it at dinner the way most people do, produced significantly greater muscle protein synthesis in adults over 60. The timing is not optional. The window is real. The second window runs through the rest of the day and requires mechanical signal, not food. Your muscles need load to justify their own maintenance. This does not require a gym or equipment. 10 slow chair squats, 3 seconds to lower and 3 seconds to rise, repeated 3 times throughout the day. 10 wall push-ups, 20 calf raises off a step. These movements apply direct mechanical stress to the major muscle groups and activate the downstream pathway that makes the leucine intervention in window 1 meaningful. Without this signal, the anabolic environment you built at breakfast has no instruction to act on. The third window is the 2 hours before sleep. This is when your body runs its primary overnight muscle repair cycle, and it requires 2 inputs. First, a casein protein source, which is a slow-digesting protein that releases amino acids steadily across 4 to 6 hours. A cup of Greek yogurt or cottage cheese before bed provides that sustained overnight supply. Second, vitamin D3 taken with your evening meal. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that vitamin D receptors exist directly in muscle tissue, and that deficiency produces fat infiltration of muscle fibers and reduced activity of satellite cells, which are the repair cells that rebuild muscle after load. An estimated 70% of adults over 60 are vitamin D insufficient. 1,000 to 2,000 IU of vitamin D3 with a fat-containing meal costs less than almost any supplement and directly supports the repair cycle your muscles are running while you sleep. 5 things. All of them are available to you tonight and tomorrow morning. 1. Check your usual breakfast tonight and decide whether it clears the leucine threshold. 3 eggs and a cup of cottage cheese is the simplest combination that does. 2. Do 10 slow chair squats tonight before you sit down for the rest of the evening. 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up. Your muscles need today's signal. 3. Eat a cup of Greek yogurt or cottage cheese tonight before bed. That is your first case in the window, and it begins working while you sleep. 4. Write down the phrase, serum IGF-1 level. Somewhere you will see it before your next appointment. That is the test your treatment has been missing. 5. Look at whatever protein supplement or shake you use, if you use one, and find the leucine content. If it is not listed or falls below 2.5 grams per serving, it is not meeting the threshold that matters. Before you close this, I want something specific from you in the comments. Not a reaction, a commitment. Write your age, write where you are watching from, and then write 1 item from this protocol, just 1, that you are starting today. Not planning to start. Starting. Because the distance between understanding something and doing something with it is exactly where the years collect. I read every comment this channel receives. The ones that tell me someone acted on something are the reason the next video gets made.